Gravity Falls, a show of humor, mystery, and casual viewing. Unless you're me. My name is Christian. You're probably wondering why I'm dressed as Tipper Pines and about to rewatch the entire series. Rest assured, there's a perfectly logical explanation.
Right now, move on to Carpe Diem. Again, kind of another one and done episode, but I feel like I like this one a little bit more because it definitely has a lot more Easter eggs and hints that kind of set up major plot points down the line in the series. And the basic premise of the episode is that Dipper and Mabel are pretty much, kind of at odds with each other, about sharing a room. Dipper kind of has his quirks of staying up in the middle of the night and, reading all these kind of sibling brothers mystery novels, kind of like a reference to the Hardy Boys, and, clicking his pen and talking to himself and writing down notes and everything and keeping Mabel up at night. And then on the flip side, Mabel kind of keeps having all these different sleepovers with Kenny and Grenda, and Dipper kind of feels left out, so he's kind of had enough, and then he wants to have his own room. So then Seuss points out this kind of mystery room that kind of this wallpaper over it, kind of goes in and then realizes that is kind of this whole other room that they can go into. And then if you kind of look in the background, there's kind of different little Easter eggs and hints everywhere. One of them being a pair of glasses that Stan finds and kind of quickly puts away, kind of hinting at oh, who do these glasses belong to, and why was this room all sealed up, and why are there all these different little hints and Easter eggs around that imply something bigger. And then kind of the main Easter egg is this carpet that's in the middle of the room, and the twins kind of have an argument of who's going to have the room. So then they kind of circle each other around the carpet, kind of dragging their feet on it, creating a static charge. And then once they make contact with each other, they actually switch bodies. So then we have a Freaky Friday storyline. So now Dipper is inside of Mabel's body, and then Mabel is inside of Dipper's body. And what I really liked about the animation with that is that they kind of styled the characters to kind of look a little bit like the other character. Now Mabel Dipper kind of has frizzier hair and kind of bags under her eyes, and then Dipper Mabel kind of has the cheek. So they kind of make the characters look a little bit like the other characters, just so that that they've switched bodies. But yeah, it's just kind of another typical Freaky Friday body swap episode. As the story goes on, there's more body swaps. Seuss and Waddles end up switching bodies, and they end up switching bodies with McGucket, and then we get Candy and Grenda involved in that, so they end up switching bodies too. And then Durlin and Blubs get involved in that as well. So kind of all comes to a head where everyone kind of switches bodies and they finally get back into their own bodies and everything. There's also kind of a subplot of Waddles inside Seuss's body and then kind of impressing a girl, and then her falling in love with him and everything like that. So I think that was kind of a fun little Easter egg for sure. Kind of sets up a plot point for a future episode. But yeah, and then overall, it kind of ends with Dipper and Mabel kind of realizing what were we even arguing about in the first place, and oh yeah, having our own rooms. And then Dipper sleeping in the new room, and then realizing I kind of miss Mabel. So then kind of goes back up to the attic, and then they resolve everything and they end up being friends again. So yeah, it's kind of a typical walk a mile in another person's shoes kind of premise, and then resolving everything in the end. So yeah, so I actually kind of like this a little bit more, even though the main conflict is something we've seen before, and not really a lot of depth to it, but it definitely has a lot of Easter eggs that set up future storylines for the rest of the series. And also there's a blink and you miss kind of detail in the background where there's a calendar that says July 1982 and the 4th of July is circled, and there's not really a significance with the 4th of July, but with the year 1982, it's definitely significant to know that this calendar hasn't been changed for 30 years. So it kind of hints at, something happened 30 years ago where someone who used to live in this room disappeared, and it's kind of hints at, does this have something to do with Uncle Stan? Is there something that happened 30 years ago that Uncle Stan wants to completely forget about? Who did those glasses belong to? Kind of starts kind of planting the seeds of okay, what is this kind of overall big mystery for the entire series moving forward? So I definitely appreciate that detail for sure. Definitely another kind of blinky miss thing that Wiki pointed out for sure. We also get another Easter egg in the episode. When Mabel wakes up the next morning after her sleepover, there's a DVD that's stuck to her face, which stars the boy band several times, where characters will be introduced in the next episode. So I thought that was a really fun hint to those characters. We also get a couple cryptograms. One of them is during a scene where Mabel is inside Dipper's body, and she's looking into the twins' room in the attic, while Candy, Grenda, and Dipper inside Mabel's body are reading romance novels, and Uncle Stan walks up to Mabel thinking that she's spying on the girls. So then he proceeds to read her a book about puberty called Why Am I So Sweaty? And at the bottom of the page is a Caesar cipher, which translates to puberty is the greatest mystery of all. Also, go outside and make friends, which I thought was really funny. And then we get another cryptogram during the end credits, which translates to Who Stole the Capers? Which is a reference to the book that Dipper was reading earlier called The Sibling Brothers and the Case of the Caper Case Caper. So I thought that was pretty funny too. Yeah, overall great episode, and definitely does a good job at hinting at future storylines to come.